Yes, yes, yes. The sight we'd like to see, we'll continue to see for years to come in Orlando, because Paolo Banchero has agreed to a 5-year super max extension with the Magic. It's worth up to $287 million. He's an all-star and coming off the best year of his career, averaging just under 26 points and 7.5 rebounds per game. The new deal will take him to 2029-2030 season, and he also gets a player option for the 2030-31 season. When he's good, the Magic are good, and Paolo's up there with one of the best we've seen in Magic history. Over the first 3 seasons of his career, just trailing only Shaq for the most points per game at 22.4. So load it up. Let's get it going, Orlando, because we are doing the thing, and that thing is welcoming in our very own Ashley Nicole Moss, because we have a whole lot of basketball to talk here about my Magic. I love the deal for Banchero, Ashley, and your thoughts are what?
You're not going to sing the song, are you?
Do you want to sing the song? We would love to hear from you.
I absolutely do not want to sing the song. I absolutely do not. I had Dwight Howard sing the song, though, when I interviewed him. That was funny. Look, I love the extension. I think it was a no-brainer. I think when you have a player of Paolo's magnitude, when you have him within your franchise, within your organization, and how important he has become in such a short amount of time, and what he really means for the future of this organization, you have to pay somebody like that. And I'm just happy that even with all of the changes that we have seen with the new CBA and the second apron, and how teams are trying to stay within a certain bracket when it comes to that, they're still paying the guys who are important to their future, and they're still paying the guys who are going to be important to ultimately what the main goal is, and that's to win championships. Obviously, last season did not go the way the Magic wanted because of injuries to Paolo and Franz Wagner, but I think that when healthy, there's so much upside to this team. They get Desmond Bane, that's going to help them offensively and from a three-point angle. But there's just so much potential with this team. I'm not saying next season they're in the contender talks, but I think with how open the Eastern Conference is going to be, as we know, the news came out that Tyrese Halliburton's not going to play next season. The jury is still out on Jason Tatum and what his rehab ultimately, how that progresses. The East is wide open, and I think we're going to see a lot of these younger teams really be able to find their footing and get into a groove and get a little bit more swag and more confidence in what they can be in that conference, and I put the Orlando Magic in that conversation.
So the Magic, of course, while they stay young over in LA, let's just say they still are old because they have Kawhi and Harden next season. But it seems like Lawrence Frank, the brass there for the Clippers, trying to add some pieces here. Chris Paul, maybe a reunion. Bradley Beal, who's looking to get that buyout. What do you think of those two possibly landing there with the Clippers?
Well, I think Chris Paul's a great option. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because he has said that he wants to start, or allegedly wants to start. That's going to dwindle his options because he's not starting in Los Angeles. But we do know that he has spoken about how difficult it's been to be away from his family most of his career, and his family is based in LA. So maybe that would supersede his desire to start. As we know, it also came out recently, I believe he was at Fanatics Fest or one of those conventions, and he said, look, this is going to be probably my last year playing. So with all of those things kind of combined in the pot, I think Los Angeles would be great for him. Obviously, we all remember Chris Paul with the Lob City Clippers and how that team just didn't manifest into what a lot of people thought on paper they should. But I think the Clippers would be a great spot for him. Like I said, from a second unit as a veteran point guard, what he can bring to the table, he's just not going to start. So if that's something he's hell bent on, like I said, his teams are going to be a little bit thin. Now, when we talk about Bradley Beal, that's a very interesting prospect, because as we know, Bradley Beal has the ultimate trump card, and that is a no trade clause. So it would have to be a buyout. And I'd be interested if that is someplace that he wants to go. Obviously, they're in a much better position to win than I believe the Phoenix Suns are next season. I'm not saying contender, but I do think this is a better playoff constructed team, as we saw down the stretch and in the postseason, than the Phoenix Suns. But we also know Bradley Beal has had his heart set on places like Miami. So it's going to be something we are watching very, very closely if this does turn out to be a buyout situation.
So let's talk some more Beal. We'll call it Beal or no Beal for this segment. You can say if it's a good fit or not a good fit, and the Lakers first.
I'd say good fit because Lakers need all the help they can get.
All right, so Lakers, San Antonio, the Spurs, Bill or no Bill?
I'm going to say no Beal. I think that the San Antonio Spurs, I really like what they are building with a young team, and I just don't see where Bradley Beal fits in that.
How do you feel about the fit with the Bucks? Beal or no Beal with what they've got going on, maybe make Giannis happy?
It doesn't really matter what you do with Giannis. He's 1 foot out the door anyway. And I don't think that Bradley Beal wants to go to Milwaukee. Again, I think if he gets bought out, he's going to want to go someplace a little bit warmer than that. But when you talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, I just feel like, look, this is the reality of the situation. They're doing everything they can to appease Giannis, which I'm not mad at. Everyone needs a relationship like that. But I just don't think it's going to ultimately change what the end goal is, and that this is not a championship team, and Giannis still and Ken wants to win a championship, and he's going to go where his best option is sooner rather than later.
All right, the Celtics, does it make any sense there? I mean, we know Tatum, as you mentioned, is recovery.
Yeah.
You don't know what that looks like, even if you do have a JT or JB there. Is that a fit for the Celtics? Does that make any sense?
The Celtics are interesting because it would be a very short-term situation, right? You're not going to the Celtics that are in a position to win a championship next season. You're going to a Celtics team that's kind of in limbo at this moment in time. Jason Tatum's injury really kind of put a fast forward what the Boston Celtics were eventually going to have to do, and that is restructure that roster. So for me, I don't see Bradley Beal kind of going back to the East Coast for a situation that isn't what we know when we think of the Boston Celtics. I think realistically, outside of Miami, who has just always been on his list, I see him wanting to go someplace where he can actually possibly contend or at least be in a position to go deep into the playoffs. And as great as the Boston Celtics are and as great as Jaylen Brown is, I think they're really going to struggle without Jason Tatum next season. And I just don't see any player who's not of a particular age, like an Al Horford or someone towards the end of their career, wanting to do that.
Well, Ashley, forget the Heat. You know, we don't need to talk about them because what I'm curious is it Beal or no Beal with the Orlando Magic? We need shooters. He's a shooter. He could be the perfect fit as Brandon turns in his chair. Like, I need him to be locked in just like you are.
Pardon my back.
The issue is that although it would look good on paper, and I do think the veteran leadership of Bradley Beal, and to your point, he is a scorer and all those attributes that he has as a player, he's not going to start more than likely, and that's probably going to be a deal breaker because when you look at the Orlando Magic starting five, especially with acquiring Desmond Bane, their starting five is pretty much set. So you bring Bradley Beal in, and who are you kicking out of that starting lineup, Zach?
Jalen Suggs, I'm sorry, you might have to go to the bench. I think that's what we'll get the defense coming off to run things. That might be what we have to do.
He's recruiting everybody. He don't know. He just wants everybody. He
just wants everybody.
But,
yeah.
No, I didn't say I want Luka.
Straws here.
It would make sense. He went to school an hour and a half up the road in Gainesville. Come on back to Central Florida.
Do you think that Bradley Beal's a better defensive player than Jalen Suggs?
A better what? Say it again.
Defensive player than Jalen Suggs?
No, absolutely not. But
so then why would you take Jalen out of the lineup? You need someone to play defense.
We need some offense. We need someone to knock out some trays aside from just Desmond Bane. We need that.
You also need somebody to play some defense.
And everybody else will. Powell will, Franz will, Desmond Bane will, Wendell Carter Jr.
I do think, listen, I think that Desmond Bane is going to give a spark to this offense that we didn't see last season. And I think that that's the mindset. Everyone can play defense. Jalen Suggs is a great defender. I think you're going to see all of those guys on the floor with him because of the addition of Desmond Bane get better offensively, which then goes back to my previous point of who you're going to take out of the starting lineup. Because Bradley Beal is definitely not going to Orlando to come off the bench. I can tell you that much.
So while his Magic tried to, I guess, build a big three, 15 years ago, we actually saw something like that with Miami, with LeBron James in the decision. I'm curious now, today is the anniversary. Your thoughts, what do you remember about that moment?
I just remember how groundbreaking it was. I just remember watching it on TV, just being glued to it. Obviously not a Heat fan, I'm a Knicks fan. So when he said he's taking his talents to South Beach, I was like, but I just remember how it was kind of the first of its kind, if that's fair to say. We've never seen a player with this much anticipation of where he was going, and the way that he did it on live TV, I feel like kind of set into motion, you know, these other type of announcements that we have seen since then. And obviously social media has taken the charge on that versus live TV. But I just remember how much of a pioneer LeBron was for the way that he announced that decision. And I also remember all the controversy behind it and how people to this day have a beef with how LeBron did it. But again, I think it set into motion a lot of the announcements that we kind of see today in the world of sports, especially in the NBA.
Yeah, we got villain LeBron because of that for a little bit of time.
We sure did.
Popping off and his super teams, all that stuff. And then
that was his villain origin story. Absolutely.
And then you know what the NBA did? Take this second apron. Try that again. That's what they did.
No, that's CJ McCollum's fault. So we gotta talk to him.
Right. Ashley Cole-Moss, as always, giving us everything we need when it comes to association. Appreciate it. Hey, look, the conversation doesn't always go along here in the Morning Buzz, but the triple threat. Ash got you covered per usual. Just check her out weekdays per usual. Watch now wherever you get that pod on Sports Network and also YouTube.
The gang was back together. It feels good, as it should. Hope you had fun. We saw you out there on social.
You did? What'd you say?
Shout out to your mom. Happy surprise birthday.
That's why I was gone. Family first, baby. See you.